first of all, I want to start off with how you guys know each other. How did you guys meet? I know you guys have been friends for a really long time. So how did you meet and how did the musical partnership come about?
Well, the first time we met, I guess it depends on who remembers most.
Yeah,
Julian,
that is true. Um,
I
hmm,
remember.
I,
I'm curious if you remember.
well, yeah, I remember seeing you in a club in LA called Spice,
Spice
uh,
Split. That's right.
uh,
Yeah.
the Spice Club, and you were performing in your band called Darling Cruel,
Right.
and wearing thigh-high leather boots, page boy haircut, and very
On track.
on crack and fluffy shirt, and you were
Yeah.
amazing. Your voice was amazing, and I briefly met you after the show. Um, I don't recall if we hung out at that point, but then the next time I remember how we got together was actually in the south of France, where we both knew a producer called Bob Rose and we've worked independently and together with Bob Rose, and yeah, we just happened to meet at this guy's producer's house, and I couldn't friggin' believe it because it
It
had
was
been
actually Herman Rarebell. It was Herman Rarebell's house from the
that's right, the
Scorpions.
drummer from the crackhead drummer from the Scorpions, yeah, he
Herman's the
was
German, right? Yeah, yeah.
Herman's the German, yes.
Herman's the
Um,
German. Right?
Yeah, and we just hit it off again, and one thing led to another, and we just started working and writing and singing and playing together on each other's work on the road. Um, it's been a long and fun relationship over the years.
Yeah. It's
And
been a
you
hell of
have
a
the,
journey, man.
yeah, yeah. Well, you guys are obviously good partners, both as friends and as musical collaborators. How did this particular song, A New Dream, why did you decide was this an idea you've been kicking around for a while, or tell us about the making of this track?
Well, it
Over
was
to you.
initially. Want me to go with that, Jay?
Yeah. Over to you. Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
okay, yeah. It was initially recorded in Prague many years ago on a solo record that I did, Shell, uh, co-written with our dear friend Anthony Callaghan at the Julian's Treehouse Studio. And somehow, I can't remember why, but it was never released by the record company. And then many years later, we're in COVID times, and I'm bored out of my freaking mind. Work is slow.
Yeah.
As we all were. Everything here was closed down. We couldn't leave our villages. We couldn't leave. We were just pinned down into the studio or our homes, whatever. And I started going through all these old tracks. And my son started jumping up and down singing A New Dream. And it just kind of sparked something in me to revitalize that track. And I got a hold of Julian's vocal and my vocal and started from scratch and just painted a whole new entire picture for the song. And then sent
Very
it to
much.
Julie, and then he had his stuff with the atmospheric stuff going on with the vocals, and then it was never released then. And then many years go by, and it just felt like this last year, the end of 2024, it really felt like this was the time. So I approached Julian with the idea because of what's going on. It's very obvious what's going on. And approached the management, and everyone just seemed to be in accord that this was the right time to release it. And there you have it.
There we have it. There's the story. And Julian, I should
Yeah.
before we get any further, I should point out my mom is a big fan, and Vlad is one of her favorite albums of all time. So
Thank
I
you.
have to give a shout out to my mom for we had the tape when I was growing
Of
up. So.
course. Thanks, Mom. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's a great record.
Yes, yes, it is.
Yeah.
And you've had Julian, you've had such an interesting career. You had this start when you were you're very young, and you had these hits and everything, and all this attention because of who you are, because of your family. Um, when did you really feel comfortable as a solo artist, comfortable in your own skin, to where you didn't feel as much like John Lennon's son, you felt like Julian Lennon, the solo artist, or have you always kind of
I've
had that confidence?
no, I've always, well, I wouldn't say confidence, but I've always believed in the work that I've done, whether that's in music, photography, documentary, or children's books, whatever. I think you have to have a certain amount of um chutzpah or oomph to, get into a business like this to begin with, regardless of your heritage or lineage, Um, I've always loved music, and I've always tried to do the best I could. I think it was more about what the media had to say about the relationship, or how they felt I felt about my situation. Excuse me, having this shadow cast over me, which I never felt I had. I just wanted to get on with the work and get on with life and just do the best job I could. Um, and so, it's a difficult one. It's a bit of a knife's edge, because there's always going to be, to a degree, some of that element uh, in the play, but I try not to pay attention to it, to be honest with you. I mean, there's been a couple of times in my younger years where, if I was having a bit of a rough time, and occasionally you would come across an article that was not particularly favorable, or just put you down because of that lineage and that history. It could be pretty tough. In many respects, I'm surprised I'm still around, uh, because of so many of the ups and downs I've been through. But I've always felt like I've been a survivor, and I just keep on marching on. I just keep doing what I can do and trying to do the best job at whatever hat I'm wearing. That's it. And I feel, certainly, I think we all do as artists, that we just try to better ourselves with each next project. I certainly felt that I have over the years. So, uh, again, keep on keeping on and try and enjoy it as best as you can. But it's tough sometimes, no question about it. Not just for me, for everybody.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Gregory, to you, how were you able, were you immediately able to see Julian as his own person, as opposed, or how hard was it to see past Julian as John Lennon's son, as just Julian the musician? How did that dynamic work for you?
It's a crazy dynamic, and I remember exactly when I first heard Julian. I was in my Triumph Spitfire, and he popped up on the radio, and it was sitting on a pebble by the river playing guitar. Ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah.
Julian Lennon.
Oh
I go,
God.
who the hell is Julian Lennon?
Mm.
I was completely
I've
freaked
actually
out
never
because
heard, I've
I'd
never heard
never
that
heard it.
story.
First time I heard it was in a Triumph Spitfire, and I
Mm.
was absolutely blown out. And my manager, Vicky Hamilton, and we went to see him at the Universal Amphitheater.
Oh yeah,
And
geez.
that's so at a very young age, I was able to identify Julian as Julian and not the son of, if you get my meaning.
Yeah.
So when it came to working with Julian, it didn't really even dawn on me. Other people had to put it on me like, wow, that's incredible. And I never really thought about it. I was just on a one-on-one with Julian. And I think that's what made it so special, because it didn't really enter my brain until someone brought it up to me,
Well, that's good.
particularly in the
That's
studio.
pure. That's
Yeah,
pure. Yeah. That's nice. Nice.
because of the way the history started,
Right. Right.
if that
Um,
makes sense.
yeah, totally. Absolutely. And Julian, you've had kind of an interesting, you talk about interesting dynamic is a light way of putting it. You've
Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about you've been quoted in the press having very strong opinions about the Beatles and your father. Do you feel like you're at peace with his legacy and with the Beatles' legacy? Are you able to enjoy the music for what it is now?
I've always enjoyed. I've never had an issue with the Beatles' music or Dad's music ever. Um, I've always stated that uh, the likelihood, the reality, really, is that they've always been probably my number one go-to for not only being a fan of, but listening to how to write a great record. How to write a great song. I mean, you know, what they came up with over the course of their career was staggering. Um, so it's a good playbook to look to if you want to know how to write a good song.
Yep.
I mean, and the fact of the matter is, and I think you know this, is that Dad walked out the door when I was about 5 years old. Um, and Mum and I lived a completely separate life out of the limelight. We were not socializing with any other celebrities or any other people throughout our lifetime. And I only saw him a couple of times before he died. So you got to realize that, my take on the Beatles or the whole situation was almost of an outsider, and that's the truth of the matter. Um, and again, a weird dynamic, but that's the reality. And I was happy in my own little world with Mum, who was the shining light of my life. She showed me how to live and how to live gracefully, and I had a couple of insanely interesting stepfathers. Uh, my favorite being my first Italian stepfather, who was more like an older brother troublemaker to me, really, until his passing about 20 years ago or so. But uh, so that was all of that was kept way past arm's length, and it only came closer into the picture when Mum actually rang him, got in touch with him to say, "Listen, you have a son here. Don't forget. You need to try to let him know that you love him." So it it was tough. It was tough, but it was like having two separate lives. It really, really was. Um, uh, apparently, as a young kid, at least in the first initial couple of years, I'd be pretty upset about, where the hell has he gone? Where's your father gone? I mean, that's a pretty normal thing that any kid under those circumstances would say. But I mean, the fact that he was John Lennon and was in one of the biggest bands in the world. Okay, yeah, it's takes it to another level. But I for the most part, I felt that I grew up relatively normally, um, apart from a few circumstances that happened, like in schools and things like that. But apart from that, getting back to the Beatles, I mean, I've always loved their work, and I've always loved Dad's work as well. A major fan. So I've never put them or him down for the music that they've created. That's for sure.
Now, do you have a favorite Beatles song or album? I'm sure you get asked that a lot, or do you?
Come on. I mean, that's almost impossible. That's it's impossible. The I mean, the only one I that has been a go-to um, has been across the universe, I think. I mean, but just too many to mention. Too many to mention through because of the lyrical content, the arrangements, the scores, and I truly believe, and I think most would agree that, I think without their producer, dear George Martin, it may have been a different deal altogether. I think he really was a member of the band without question.
The fifth Beatle
And
for sure. Yeah.
yeah, very, very special and a lovely, lovely guy. I mean, I was fortunate enough only to meet him a few times, but uh, such a humble and great presence in a man that had such heart and such knowledge about music. I mean, beautiful though.
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of production, like it's interesting how you said how music can sound different depending on who's producing the song. How
Sure.
important is that like producer artist relationship?
Well, I think it depends on each and every artist where their head's at and what they want from their career. I mean, I've enjoyed working with other producers in the past, but I also, as I've grown older and become closer, I guess, closer to me and my work, I've always heard it in my head what I want to put on tape or on or record these days. Um, and it's a pretty clear picture. So I've really enjoyed producing my own work, but it's fortunately I've on the occasions that I have done that, at least the last couple of albums, I've co-produced it with people that I admire and trust their integrity, their opinion, and their strength. Because I think once in a while you do need a different opinion thrown in there, if not just to make you think a little more outside the box than you would generally have done. I think a lot of people aren't uh, production orientated as well. That potentially, sometimes you, you know. Uh, there are a lot of people that just want that support and help and direction because they don't see it or feel it themselves. Maybe that's a question of age. I really don't know. Um, uh, but at least that's where my head is at these days. But again, I think sometimes it's good to work with other people. I mean, I love whether it's either recording or writing. Love working with other people. I get bored doing this stuff on my own. So,
You are
you
an
know,
artist that
again,
wears many hats as well, whether it's photography, like you said.
yeah.
You're also an author as well as a songwriter. I was wondering, are those your photos in the back?
Mm. Those, yeah. Sorry.
Oh, sick. Can you tell us about them?
Um, yeah, I should. You know what? I should have had a book here. Naughty me. Um,
Yeah.
um, Yeah, those were taken. I just brought them back from an exhibition in Monaco. Um, those particular pictures are of the now Princess Charlene of Monaco, formerly Princess Charlene Wittstock, um, and I was given a call the night before she was being going to be married um, from a mutual friend who said, "Listen, Charlene wants you to come and take photos of her before the wedding." I said, "You got to be kidding! That's not what I take pictures of clouds." And, and and landscapes and well, I mean some kind of some portraiture and things like that when I'm uh, um, out in the wilds of Ethiopia or Kenya. the storytelling stuff. But I've never, I've never done the lights, camera, action kind of thing. I use natural light. I've never set anything up. I don't like studio setup, so I feel really uncomfortable with that. I prefer doing something naturally organic and off the cuff. Anyway, this became that. I said, yeah, okay, I'll give it a shot. And I literally introduced to her. I mean, I'd met her a couple of times before, but I literally was taken up to the hotel room where she was and all her maids of honor were. And she was in this very small room, maybe 20 by 10, and with uh, the hairdresser, the hairdresser's assistant, the makeup artist, the makeup artist's assistant, the assistants. And there were so many people in here. And I came and sat next to her on this little booth, and she was kind of glazed over. And I said, I said, I've never done anything like this before. I'll do my best. I'll just, be a fly on the wall. And she said, "Listen, Jules, I don't think I can do this." And I'm going, "Oh, geez, what are you, what are you talking about? What do you mean you don't think you can do this?" I said, the wedding? Is that what you're saying? And she said, no, I don't think I can do these photographs. I said, listen, I'll be a fly on the wall. I promise. I promise. I said, listen, I'm here now. This is a historic moment. You're becoming a freaking princess. A princess. So she said, okay, okay. I said, but one thing you have to promise me, you can't show a picture of me either having a drink or with a cigarette in my hand. That's it. Of course, no problem. So anyway, I've got 10 minutes before she's going to get married. I go, "Fuck." So I'm moving around 20 people doing stuff while she's kind of, glazed and thinking about her circumstances. And I just shoot. I'm just doing whatever I can. I get a couple of 100 pictures. I don't know if I've got anything that makes any sense. I really don't. And then right at the end of it, we watch the ceremony on TV, and I get a message saying Vogue.com want a picture of her smiling to put out immediately. I've got Vogue.com. Oh, Jesus. So I go back to the house, put all the pictures up on the screen, and I look at it and I'm going, I've got nothing. I've got nothing. All of this looks like shit. It looks like crap. Oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So there's two pictures, but one in particular where she's leaning back with a glass of champagne, smiling, with a ciggy in one hand, like this on the side, and champagne. And I'm going, great. I've got a photograph, but she's drinking and she's got a cigarette. What do I do? What do I do? And this is early Photoshop time. I was never a Photoshop kind of guy, but I figured, all right, I'll try and get rid of the cigarette. I'll try and get. So I managed to do that, little hacking, and I thought, okay, listen, how am I going to deal with the champagne? How am I going to do? And there was lots of water bottles around the room, so I thought, okay, all right, let me desaturate it, not make it black and white, but desaturate it so there's still an element of depth or warmth within the picture. And I did that, and so it's almost black and white. You'd think it was black and white, but it's not. And I just cropped it in a way that was kind of reminiscent of like Time magazine of the 50s and 60s. And then I went, and what I did was I turned all the pictures into that desaturated look. And I looked at it and I cropped the pictures. I thought, oh my God, what am I thinking? Princess Grace. Oh, this is this is the modern Princess Grace. Why don't I make it like the 19 sort of 30s, 40s, 50s, black and white, the look of it, the feel of it, and crop it as though it was like Time magazine from that era. And the moment I did that, everything changed. It was just a different perspective, a different way of thinking about the image, and it took on a life of itself. And it's those the pictures, and she's on the front cover of the my first ever
Oh,
photography book, which you got it there, have you? Good
yeah,
boy.
Gregory showing
There
me
you
it.
go. There you
Oh
go.
my
Well done, Greg.
God, wow.
So that's me
Well,
in the background.
it's a coffee table book, and I literally have it on my coffee table.
Nice,
Well, that's
nice.
very good. Is that not a beer table, Greg? Sorry.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
A
more.
steam mate.
it's so that was pretty darn special. And then it was only last year, at the beginning of last year, that I was offered for the first time. I tried to put a coffee table book together before, but I didn't get any bites from any publishing companies. So out of the blue, this well-known company in Germany called Tenoise reached out and said, "Do you want to do a coffee table book?" And I went, "Yes." And they said, "Why haven't you done one before?" I said, "Because I couldn't get a deal."
Mm.
So being a Lennon doesn't always work in your favor, believe you me. Um, and they hadn't even looked at the pictures. It was like, really? Um, anyway, I'm very, very thankful. And some of those pictures, by the way, Demi, will be at a show in New York in about 10 days' time. Um,
Wow.
Like, I have to check
That
it
was
so
out.
that was a great way to tie that back in and do a little promotion for your show. Julian. That
well,
was nice. That
I
was
got to
nice.
That
throw
was
something
slick,
in
Jay.
there.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Well,
Are
well,
you
I
are
just
Julian? Are you let's go back to the film days. Were you a rangefinder guy, a 35 millimeter guy, a Mamiya guy? Like, what did you shoot with back in the film days?
um, I didn't really, to be honest with you. Um, that, the first time I really got interested in photography was actually when I went to visit Dad when I was about 11 years old, and he had what they call it's a Polaroid, and it's a SX70 land camera. I don't know if you know those ones. Um, they're flat like that, and you pull them out, and they're covered in kind of like brown leather or black leather. And I tried my hand at photography with film, but I'd always screw it up somehow, mess the film up, and so I lost interest. But it was with the Polaroid that the fact of the matter was that you took the picture, and within a few minutes you'd be able to see the picture immediately. So instant gratification on that front was very exciting. And so when the advent of digital came in, although digital didn't look great in the earlier days, it was so-so. When I decided to get back into this, through a friend, Timothy White, who's an amazing photographer who did my second and third album covers. Um, uh, my challenge, I thought, if I'm going to do this, I want to see if I can make digital look like film. And just a very, very brief story. Amsterdam exhibition, a lot of English artists and photographers. It was kind of like a Brit Pack kind of thing. And I was cornered by this slightly older American woman who was a fine art photography critic. And she cornered me for most of the afternoon. And I was thinking, how am I going to get out of this? Because I can be pretty shy sometimes and just, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, thank you very much. And uh, after all the Q&As from her, the last thing she said to me was, said, "So tell me, are your photographs, are they digital or are they film?" And I said, "You tell me." And the moment I figured that she couldn't tell the difference was the moment I went, all right, I'm on the right path. So I just, that was it for me. And I absolutely fell in love with photography. I I don't consider myself a professional anyway. I've got, what's that syndrome called? Um, where you don't believe,
Imposter
uh,
syndrome.
imposter syndrome. I am full of that, full of imposter syndrome for music, for books, for photography, all of that. I don't believe I deserve anything that comes from any of it, uh, but I'll gladly give it a go.
I appreciate it. I'm a photographer, so it was great. It was great to kind of get that. Yeah, I'm actually putting together an archive, a book of my past music. I'm a music photographer, so I'm kind of compiling my New York work and my LA work
Okay.
together. So yeah,
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
Nice.
yeah. I'm not a technical guy at all. I just kind of street photographer, guerrilla, where I just shoot and hope for the best. And initially, what I do is I actually find the picture within the picture after the fact. Not that I do a lot of post, but it's just, I get the idea of a shot and hope I've got something, and then when I get back and I can actually breathe and look at it all, I go, oh well, maybe I've got something here. Let me work on it.
yeah,
But not too much. I don't work on stuff enough that takes it away from what it originally is. That's not why I'm there. It's more of trying to capture a moment where it's a message, where it's communication between people. It's same with music. I mean, that's why Greg and I do what we do, and what we love is that telling stories. Really, I guess.
yeah. I know you guys gotta go pretty soon, but you go by Greg. I know you're Gregory professionally, I guess, but um,
Greg,
Yeah.
Greg
yeah,
Ski.
Gregory's
That's his
fine,
other.
Greg. Julio
Greg
calls
Ski.
me Greg Ski. I call him Julio, just
Julio, indeed.
love it, love it.
Julio, Jules, Julian.
I you were really part of the LA rock scene in the 80s and like the Sunset Strip kind of vibe. Um I that's always fascinated me as a music history person. And I
Right.
live, I'm in Silver Lake now. I'm about a mile, 2 miles from the strip.
Yeah.
Um, can you describe what that was like? And do you have any wild memories, or what's the wildest thing you saw when you were working with these bands on the Sunset Strip, in 85, 86, 87?
Well, I was subjected to it all, and a good friend of mine, a dear friend, she told me she's absolutely amazed I was able to navigate through such chaos
Oh yeah.
and survive the madness. Julian, you were living there in that time as well. It was
Well, I was.
absolute mayhem.
I was. Also at the same time, it was one of the most memorable and fun times of my life, without question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was the time
There's,
of my life.
there was just because there was so much music about as well, and so many clubs and
Yeah.
bars that there was some there were several bands to see every night. Every night there was something going along. Back in the day in LA, it was
Yeah.
such an exciting time. I mean, it was fun, 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 and inspiring. It almost killed us, but we had a good time. We're still
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Just to see
Just
Guns N' Roses at the Roxy. I had the manager Vicky
whiskey,
Hamilton of
whiskey.
Guns N' Roses, Faster Pussycat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We were all, I was in Darling Cruel. We were all out of our mind, but we were all had each other's backs, and there was a certain mutual respect. But then there was a lot of competition as well.
Julian,
A lot of
everyone,
competition. It was bombarded with flyers everywhere, and it was quite the scene.
well, that made the music good. Everyone pushed each other, so
I believe so. Hell of a point,
Yeah.
mate. I think we all made each other better and push harder at what we were doing, and to create some form of originality, because there was, you say you had Poison come out, then there would be 1,000 Poisons or a Guns N' Roses. So it was the ones that truly stuck out as an individual were the ones that were going to get a shot at some record deal and at least get a chance.
yeah, yeah. And Julian, everyone compare,
Yeah,
you know, people compare your voice to your dad's, and your
yeah.
music is I love this kind of ethereal pop that you've kind of captured, both modern and retro
Mhm.
sounding at the same time. But what were you
Okay.
listening to? What did you like as a teenager? Were you into heavy metal? Were you into soul music? Like, what did you listen to? What
Uh,
influenced you?
well, the first band actually went to see was AC/DC,
I knew it. I don't
with
know how
Bon
I knew that.
Scott. Bon Scott. Then the next band I went to see was
Brilliant.
Rush. I was a big fan of Rush. I used to listen to Led Zepp all the time. Um, a lot of rock stuff, you know. First single I ever bought was "Whoa, Black Betty, Bam a Lamb." Um, there's, you know, the list goes on. But I enjoyed. I guess, and I've commented this many times. That I was a big fan of Steely Dan, big fan of Keith Jarrett, because I play by ear. So back in the day, I used to just write by ear, still do really, and hope for the best. And I mean, stuff I've kind of dug recently and played around with a little bit is I've done a couple of mixes with lo-fi. I found that really intriguing stuff because you know, I was able to take a couple of tracks on the album, one in particular that Greg and I wrote called "Save Me," and do a lo-fi mix of that with a friend of mine, Tim Ellis. And I love the fact that you could still have the essence of the song, but give it another feel and another groove
Yeah.
entirely that was gave new life and a new buzz, especially because you know you could. I mean, this last album, the last album I did, Jude. You know, it took about 5 years to make, inclusive of the whole COVID couple of years with COVID. But you know, that was songs from some songs, ideas and songs recorded 30 years ago, and some over the course of the 5 years of writing and recording. So to take those and have a bit more fun with them by doing, you know, lo-fi remix was mixes was great. And I so I'm and I did, yeah, there was I think I was watching another podcast that you guys did. I can't remember the artist's name, but he was talking about EPs and how the fact that certainly that's the way I feel that I'm going. It's either singles or EPs in the future because number one, you can get the work done much quicker. I'm not saying that that speed is the essence here, but it's just an album is a long process and it's a lot of heart and soul. And you know, I've certainly experienced it where you've, you know, especially with labels in the past, where you've just your work has been shelved after you know a year or 2 years or whatever of pouring your heart into this stuff. And so you know with the idea of EPs moving forward, you know you can have anywhere between two, three, 5 songs or 7 songs. It's that the pressure's not the same. It's just I think you can be more excited more immediately and just
Yeah.
do the work, put it out there, and get on with the next
Yeah. Much
project.
more
You know,
spontaneous. And you don't
yeah,
subject yourself to being, like you said, being put on the shelf and you just keep moving.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I found that you know good stuff anyway, good stuff, and uh, that's how I see at least my work and even work with Greg. Uh, you know, because no doubt we'll be doing some more stuff this year at some point, but um, that's how I see things progressing anyway, at least in my world.
Yeah, well, Demi's working on an EP now, not to embarrass her, not to call her out, but so this would be a little inspiring for her, I'm sure.
All right, Demi,
I
we'll be
think
on the lookout.
Ooh, thanks,
All
guys.
All
right, Demi, you got anything else you want to ask him?
No, I mean just on the topic of the album versus single, it is kind of more of like you know when you write an album and then it comes out later on, but like you kind of feel like a different person by the time it's released.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I
So
produced a
yeah.
few
yeah,
artists, and it takes so long. They have a new identity by the time the product is
exactly.
released. So it's a hell of a question. So what do you do about it?
Yeah, what do you
Yeah.
do?
Mm,
Good bloody question.
mm.
Keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a slight reinvention at the end, maybe a twist, a remix. You're talking about image as well, right? How you like to perceive yourself and
Yeah.
sonically everything, right?
Well, not to get too far down to it, but she
Yeah.
spent some time in the UK. Julian, her boyfriend lives in Leeds, so she spent some time in Leeds,
All
Leeds.
right.
and
I remember
was
Leeds.
yeah.
Me
So
too.
that, having a different environment, I think, can be inspirational too. If you travel to a different place or live somewhere temporarily, that can kind of
Absolutely.
influence you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right,
Very
guys. Thank
true.
you so much for joining us in the show. Really appreciate the interview, and it was great to talk to you guys.